Welcome to Aligned Energy with me, Manon, a place where ancient wisdom meets modern health and wellness. People are waking up, questioning who they are and why they're here. For high-performing women, the climb to success can leave them feeling stuck, depleted, or disconnected. But what if the answer isn't in doing more, but in aligning with your true essence? I'm Manon de Veritch, and together with Dr. Pat, this show is about coming home to yourself unapologetically. Through education, ancient wisdom, and modern science, we explore energy as the foundation of healing and transformation. Join us now on Aligned Energy and step into the life you were meant to live. Aligned Energy starts now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Pat. It's great to have you here. You know, that opening says it all, and it includes me, and it includes many of you. Today, you're getting an introduction to a fabulous show, which we are going to be doing on a regular basis. But you should know a little bit about Manon. First of all, about what she does to connect, how tapping into authentic feminine power is so important. Now, you can find this out from her best-selling book. She's a former tech executive. There's so many things that both she and I have in our experience. And some days I used to think I'm never going to use this. I am absolutely not going to use this corporate experience. And here I find myself pulling on almost every job that I've ever had, including my graphics job. But what Manon has discovered is for way too long, women executives have been conditioned to adapt, assimilate to traditional masculine approaches. And yet, when you look around the world and you see leaders and you see women that are leading or have led countries, and even, you know, one of my favorite people I love to refer to was Chancellor of Germany. But here we are, we look around the world and we wonder, how did they do that? How were they able to navigate those waters? But then you break it down to us as individuals. And sometimes as women, we are left mystified by who we should become, how we should become it, and who the heck is going to care anyway. But what's the message about that? Today, you're going to hear what that looks like. This episode is our first, Awakening and Awareness. And what you will find today, why are we burning out? You know, what is that about burnout? My friend did a great study about burnout, and she was part of the police department in LA. Great study. I helped her with it. And even then, when we did it, I didn't get it. So today, where are we? What happens to the dream? Is burnout a way to accelerate and align? And how do you come home to yourself? Manon, it's great to have you here. Thank you for doing this episode. And, you know, let's start with some of the things I talked about. This idea of trying to assimilate, trying to adapt, you know, trying to put on, you know, oh my gosh, like when Wonder Woman movie came out, like everybody's like, oh, are you going to be Wonder? But there's so many things that have been put in front of us to become outside of who we really are. What have you discovered along the way? And then, you know, what happens to some of us when our dream literally vaporizes in front of us?
Wow, that's a powerful vision, right? But I think a lot of us that are probably watching right now can relate to that. I feel like there are so many women right now that I'm talking to that are just feeling like they have been doing all of the things that we've been conditioned to do in the way that we've been conditioned to do it. And they just reach a point where, it can either you can use the metaphor of, like a frog beginning to boil in water, where we just don't see things reaching some kind of a critical mass where our bodies and minds are starting to fall apart. But you just reach a point one day where you realize, is this it? Is this what I've been climbing to the top of the mountain for? Maybe it's going to get better when I get that next promotion or I get that raise or something around the corner, then I'm going to feel better. And I'm just finding that so many women are like, it's not even worth it anymore. I don't even care about the money and the nice car and the big house. Like, I just want to find some peace with myself. And what I've come to realize is that they find that peace really only through quieting down, tapping in, coming out of their head into their body, and just reconnecting with who they really are. So that's really what I would love to explore
Yeah.
further today,
Yeah.
all the
And let's
wonderful
talk
ways.
about that because I started this out by talking about awakening and awareness. And sometimes, right, we don't know how we become who we are. So we have to look at how and what we've been taught to believe about success and what it looks like. You know,
Mm.
for myself, my dad, having lost everything, every time I called him, the first question out of his mouth was, "How much money are you making?" First question out of his mouth. Not even, "Hi, how are you? How is it going? How much money?" Every call. And I was prepared for every call until I realized at some later point, I'm making a lot of money. And I said to my dad, "Dad, you asked me that now. You've been asking me that for like 20 years. And I got to ask you, why don't you ask me if I'm happy?"
Yeah.
And my dad said, "It doesn't matter."
Ooh.
Right now, I'm
Ooh.
sharing that just to say I knew my dad wasn't right. And I knew what happened shortly thereafter as I left that job, regardless of what I made, but I didn't know where it was going. So, what are
Mhm.
the signs? What was it that maybe I got in signs from my body, from my soul, that had me answer my
Mm.
dad differently on that one day?
Yeah. So there are a number of things that are going to be a little bit different for everybody. I also think there are signs that we don't always hear and listen to right away until the whispers become screams, as they say. But for me, especially, it started with physical signs. I had just chronic tension and pain. My digestion was messed up. I was incredibly fatigued and just surviving on my constitution alone. I had cortisol through the roof. I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue or adrenal shutdown, I should say, to the point where my doctor said to me when I came in for hormones because I was 60 pounds heavier and unable to move the needle. She said, "I can't even believe you can get out of bed with these labs. Like you're surviving completely on your willpower and your constitution to move ahead." Because we do get into that momentum and that pace where you just have to keep pushing that rock up the hill. You have to keep going, going, going. And nobody ever tells you you can put that bag of bricks down, that there are all these, years of energetic burdens that, with the right guidance, you can learn to set that down. I also would say that sleep was disturbed. You get crazy dreams or you just start having erratic sleep patterns. But then also emotional and energetic signs start coming up, right? Like you're just super restless or agitated. Um, I mean, I started progesterone, which helped a little bit with the irritability, but you just are very short-tempered. You aren't experiencing any of the high highs anymore. Like my doctor had said to me in that visit, you probably don't even remember what joy and passion feel like. And I'm committing to you to put you back on a path where you can feel that in your body again. And that's become my mission is helping
Mhm.
people come out of their head into their body and feel that aliveness again. I also want to add some of the signs can include just like intuitive gut signs. So, maybe sometime you're just like, it just pops up like, hell no, I don't want to do that. Or like you pull back from something that maybe before you would have just either been a people pleaser or you would have found a nice way to answer or a thoughtful response. But I just I just was instinctively speaking my voice, and that was nothing that I had ever really done before. I think that before you experience this organically, you can hear the term speaking your truth or finding your voice, but it doesn't really resonate until your body is just like, I've had enough. This needs to come out. You're not honoring yourself. Um, you can also have crazy vivid dreams, like anxiety dreams, dreams about like prophetic dreams, maybe. You start seeing synchronicities and signs everywhere. That was something also for me. Like I was definitely having a spiritual awakening, I will say, during this period of a complete burnout and then needing to do something differently. And thankfully for me, it coincided with COVID. So I had an excuse to hole up and not travel and not take calls and, not be super busy, but actually to sit and heal and connect. But that was when I started learning about angel numbers, and my body would just start activating when I would see certain things come up. And I'm like, that's weird. Why am I getting chills when I'm seeing that? That came up the last time that person popped up. Maybe I'm supposed to explore that. So you start following, you know, breadcrumbs, I would say. And then you find yourself pulling towards solitude. So, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there's just something in you that's like, I just would really stay home, want to stay home and read, or I just want to go for a walk instead of going to happy hour, or, I don't really want to hang out with that friend group right now. It doesn't call to me. Also for me, I didn't want to see scary movies or horror movies anymore. And my
Mhm.
husband at the time was like, "You always used to like this thing." And I'm like, it just, my body didn't want to see that chaos,
Yes.
and we know that our bodies experience it as if it's real, whether it's real or not. So it makes perfect sense that that would be starting to happen as I get in tune with my body. So
Yeah.
those are a
Well,
few of the
part
things.
of this too is I want to go back to something you said, and it's about whispers. Somebody asked me a long time ago, how did I know? Dot, dot, dot. The bunch of how did you know? And a million questions. And I said, it's not like I experienced most change in my life. This time, I'm not getting hit with the 2x4. I'm getting information about a vision that's so foreign to me, but I'm listening now because I
Mm.
know what it's like when my soul is trying to get my attention and I'm like just totally oblivious. And I don't want to go through that. And so now I pay more attention to whispers. And let's talk about whispers before we talk about burnout, because that comment to my dad was a voice that came through me to say something different to my dad. And it was a sign that while I'm making all this money, something was deteriorating in me. The joy and the fulfillment, the happiness. I couldn't even get my relationship right.
Mm.
I just started to do strange things that had nothing to do with it. So how do we begin to hear those whispers before one, they become screams? Screams is a sign. But then when you don't pay attention to the screams, then my body breaks down, your body broke down, and we don't want people's bodies to break down, do we?
Yeah, the universe definitely has a plan for us that we don't necessarily remember in the moment, but it's not going to give up trying to wake you up and remind you what that is, right? So it definitely is a progression of things that are starting to happen in your life too, not just physically in your body, but when things that used to work for you, the way that you were experiencing and doing life doesn't work for you anymore. The way you're communicating with your partner is is not working anymore. They're not hearing you or you're not hearing them. Things that you used to do, as a CEO that used to work like clockwork, how you ran the business, how you marketed and sold, all of these things. Just you're doing them, but the sales aren't coming in, the clients aren't coming back, people aren't responding, and you're like, this has always worked before. It's the same message, or I feel like I'm in tune and I'm saying the right thing, but there's just not that connection. And I heard it said recently that communication isn't just speaking, it's hearing and understanding. It's both our communication. So I feel like when it becomes this one-sided communication where you're speaking, but it's not landing, like that is a surefire sign of a whisper. It's like something's a little off. You might want to pay attention. I would also say that there's just resistance left and right in life. I think that you just feel like you're suddenly challenged and
Hmm.
you feel like you're just hitting maybe a bad luck streak or you get hit in your car or you know somebody close to you is having a health maybe you're having a health challenge. So I also think that that gradually becomes a feeling that you just are less motivated by money and material things to your point. And I think that's a real awareness for people to be like, wow, I really would rather, you know, be a barista than make $200,000. I mean, not very many people say that, but you get my point. Like you
I
just,
do get your point.
it's not worth the, especially as an executive where you just are never off the clock. You're always thinking and worrying and building and planning and strategizing and you're always on and
Yeah,
you hit a wall. So
yeah,
that's definitely a sign that you're not broken, you're not alone. This is your awakening. And in fact, in the book that I co-authored that you mentioned, Lead Like a Woman, the Gratitude Edition, I refer to this exact thing as the wake up call and my wake up call. And yeah, not
yeah.
worth the
But
sacrifice.
one of the things you said, and I want to jump to this, now because burnout. Now, I want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it as this portal, this doorway.
Mhm.
And, I can look back now and I remember after becoming totally rebellious and being part of the downsizing that I was supposed to implement 6 months before a full pension, because I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about where am I? There was something inside of me that said you don't have it in you to implement this. This is your job and you're never going to be able to live with yourself ever again. There was something about it that I knew, but I didn't know. I didn't understand it until I studied it for 10 years. But I knew intuitively, if I do this, I'm going to have a breakdown. If I implement this very cruel downsizing program for AT&T,
Yeah.
I will not be able to live with myself to fire a woman with 29 years and 11 months of service. 1 month, I couldn't do it. But I didn't actually know what was happening. It was a wake up call for me. And, the result of it is what got me here. But let's talk about how you make that transition and what it's like to follow the breadcrumbs from
Mhm.
burnout to brightening up. And that's the way I look at it now. I'm not saying it's easy. I did it kind of alone,
That's not
but
easy.
today you don't have to do it alone because that's where you come in. You come in to help people.
Mhm.
So let's talk about it. High performing people, and I was considered a high performing person. I reported directly to the presidents, the vice presidents, the board, um, all sorts of crazy things there with that. But when we get hit with this, I don't know what to call it. I don't like to call it burnout because I wasn't aware of it. But when we get hit with this awakening that I am so far out of alignment with my value system, it's been killing me. I'm drinking myself to death over it. You've got to figure out how to hit the pause button. Tell us about that. And why are high performers the ones, in my research, I made a statement: the bigger you are, the harder you fall when it comes to broken promises, right? Is it the same for high performing people, women? Is it harder for them when the reality hits them?
I will say that to me, it's not about how high of a performer you are. In my experience, it's how much of a perfectionist and a people pleaser you are. How much of a type A, dare I say, control freak you are. I that was definitely me. It was modeled or taught to me without words early on that if whatever I wanted, I needed to go out and get if I wanted to make sure it was going to be mine and not taken away or at any time. And I feel like that bled into my value system where I felt like I was the one in charge. I don't need to rely on anybody else. I can make it happen. And I think that's a pretty common attribute of perfectionists and people
Hmm.
pleasing too. I think it's like I just wanted to insert that when I was thinking about this, that Brene Brown has that beautiful reference to the fact that perfectionism is actually a sign of a shield where you're actually really afraid to be vulnerable
Mm.
or fail and seen. And so you hide behind this perfectionism. And really, it's an invitation to just, be yourself and recognize that we're all human. And I love that because it's like, it's really like, ooh, she totally nailed it. I think people brag about being a perfectionist, right? But it's eating you up inside, really.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I feel like hitting the a radical reset to me is, just turning the norm on its ear and saying, I'm not going to do the things that society says I need to do because I need to do it. I'm going to take what I call a sacred pause. I'm going to collect and tap into myself and decide what's right for me. I'm not going to feel like I need to respond at a pace or answer yes when my body is saying no or maybe. And that's a lot of things that a lot of times that people pleasers
Hmm.
do too, right? Is they want other people to be happy with them and they want to keep the peace, especially me being a Libra, I feel like. But I you really have to watch your energy leaks in that regard too, right? Because people pleasing totally leads to energy leaks. You're giving yourself to somebody else. You're sacrificing what your body wants for you just to make somebody else happy or keep the peace. And I recognize that there are times when that needs to happen you know, for various
Yeah.
safety reasons.
But the
Uh,
point is, you really can't see yourself. You're in the middle of it was interesting. I was asked in a group, and for me, my sobriety journey is what got me on my spiritual path.
mhm,
I decided to first thing I had to do was get rid of alcohol. When I got rid of the alcohol, I'm telling you, it was 2 years later that I made that bold statement that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fire this woman. And so part of it was I had 2 years to clean out the cobwebs to really reconcile my behavior of the past. But getting on that spiritual journey also helped me in the years after to really understand that I am a spiritual being in human skin. And
mhm,
if I can recognize that, what would be the spiritual version of the woes me about this? Because, part of this is making sure your soul is speaking through you and speaking through what's happening to you. And this has happened now multiple times. Um, getting rid of the alcohol, but I'm telling you, 6 months after doing my first show in 2003, April 1st of 2004, when I was getting ready to walk away from this, just walk away. Why? Because of the pressure around me. I thought you're a doctor now. What are you doing? You should be like, take that big fat consulting job. And boy, it sounded so familiar, but I didn't do it. But the people around me that were closest to me, my partner at the time, literally looked at me like, are you nuts? I
yeah.
didn't sign on for you to do this, right? And then again, you have to face yourself. Now, I will tell you, the mystery disease I got put me in a position that I couldn't do a regular job. No company would hire me. I couldn't travel. And so here I was. And I never saw that as a downside. That was the first time in my life I saw the map, I don't know what you want to call it. And I want to talk about this because this is where we step into finding ourselves and coming home. I want to take a short break. When we come back, how do you realign? How do you look at this radical rebellious side of you and learn from it? And then do you all believe that you can take whatever situation you're going through, maybe physical, maybe corporate burnout, maybe just burnout in general? Like, I got to tell you, ladies, many of you listening to this show, I feel what you went through COVID. Why? How do I feel that? Because I work with you. And yes, but now you still want to achieve things. You want to use your skills. That's what Manon does. Manon, before we go to break, how do people find about you? Let's give them some information, because when we come back, we're going to come home. So how do we find out a little bit more about you? How do they connect with you? And how do people work with you?
The best way is to go to my website, alignedenergyhealing.com. And from there, you can take a look at whether you want to come in for energy healing, which I also do at a distance. There are different modalities that I work with, or just an intuitive session. Or I also do transformation coaching, which is really allowing for deep, lasting change by helping people heal in the root, at the root cause, and immediately dissolve so that they can move forward.
You've got to do it. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to also touch upon a few items in my background. I get asked a lot about the things in my background, but there are things in my background that are up there for reasons that have nothing to do with design or creating a wall. What are they? Do you have those things to remind you? When we come back, Manon is going to take us through the journey home, how it's
Mhm.
achievable, how everybody has a birthright to be there. And no matter what your circumstance, knowing that you can work with somebody like Manon and get it done. That's what I didn't know. And today, now you know you can. Let's take a very short break, Emily. When we're back, take a breath and get ready to come home to yourself. We'll be right back. I love that music. So I was
Yeah.
talking to Manon. Manon de Veritch is joining me here today. And of course, the website is alignedenergyhealing.com, correct? Did I get that right,
Yep.
Manon? So I'm listening to that music and I remembered something interesting that leads right into what we're going to talk about now. And I was just, I was having a conversation, and what I discovered is she and I have something in common. I played the viola. I love the viola. I love class. I mean, come on now. I'm a kid from the Bronx. When Dr. DeVito introduced me to the viola, as some people say, and then classical music, I didn't even understand. I mean, honestly, couldn't read, couldn't write, but man, could I read music like nobody's business.
Mhm.
Disappointment was I really wanted to play the cello. My hands were too small. He gave me a viola. And I was so happy. And I played that so well. See, we have to remember these moments in time where we experience something, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody. Like my dad was like, "What the heck are you doing? You know, one minute you're in the garage with me changing out carburetors and your hands all green." And no kidding. When I walked in to Dr. DeVito, and music teacher, and he saw the grease under my nails, he gave me a scrub brush and said, "You ain't not touching the strings on the viola." And so part of this is learning. And I didn't take offense to it, because the experience of what I felt like I was home. See, I felt like I was home. Now, Manon, I want to talk about coming home to yourself. One of the things I had to do through COVID was I had to experience things I love. So the glass on my wall, I don't know if you can see all the glass, but there's glass.
Mhm.
That's what that is behind me, because I really wanted to be a music and art major. I love art. I do art. I make these heads. You can see my little goddess head down there. I don't know if I could show you. Emily, am I going to screw up the camera real quick? Um, but these are reminders for me that in what we're doing with the network, in our technical expansion, it must have artistry. Now, I don't know how that makes sense to anybody listening, but that's my version of a reminder that no matter what I do, I know the money will come, but I must do it in a way that's true. to the nature of myself that I'm discovering. So let's talk about coming home to yourself. When you're using and you're drinking, I want to just say this statement. Y'all heard me talk quickly on the addiction shows we do with Ellen. Everything is blurred. Your vision is blurred. Your soul is trying to get you. Your life seems like nothing recognizable to you. But when you stop and you go on a journey of healing, and especially I'm talking to you ladies, the CEOs out there that I know, and you and me, we used to go hit it pretty good. I'm just saying, nothing was clear. Not your future, not your destiny. There was no coming home, because coming home meant for us, where is that bottle of A, B, C, D, E? Now,
Hmm.
let's talk about true coming home and on, if we could,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the minute, and my soul told me, I'm telling you like I know it.
Yeah.
This is the day you will never have another drink.
Well,
And I did.
you just said so many things that I want to hit on, not
Do it.
necessarily in the order I planned to, but but that concept of the blur in your head, that was something that that's how I describe it when you are living completely in your head, where you're constantly on the hamster wheel. You've got all of these things firing and things like I liken it to tabs. I used to say windows, but now like tabs on your browser. I had the sensation at one point that I couldn't close them fast enough for two more to open. And you just get in this spiral and it creates, if you use that wheel metaphor, it just becomes that blur, right? Because it's spinning so fast. And I think that the number one way to come home to yourself, which is really a metaphor for reestablishing an intimate, loving relationship with your body, your inner truth, your heart, your mind, your soul, all that is you, your field, so that you can live from a place of authenticity instead of this conditioning
Mhm.
and obligation that we've been brought up with. So, the number one thing um, that I learned to do and that I teach people to do is to recognize that this bodysuit that we're living in, this salt bag that we are borrowing in this lifetime, I call it a body friend because I think once you reframe it as a body friend that that you're borrowing from this, from nature for this go around, it really changes the way that you take care of it, right? Because when you recognize that it's here to support you, that it's going to last as long as you take care of it. And if you're putting toxins in it and you're not strengthening it and nourishing it, it's not going to last as long. So, feeling into physical sensations like where you're finding tension versus ease and breath, so that you know when you're aligned versus overextended and you can bring yourself back. I like to do this like a drop-in check, or some people call it a sacred pause. Just placing your hand on your heart or maybe one on your belly and just breathing and just focusing on breathing into your heart and just noticing what you're feeling in your body. Some people are so disconnected, this is a challenge in the beginning. And I would invite you to look for where it feels good in your body. Because, I mean, how often are we looking for the pain? The pain is what's like, oh, my back hurts, my knee's a little kinked. Like, find some pleasure and sink into that just for a moment. And it really just resets your nervous system. And especially if you are needing to make a call, make a decision that you just are not 100% sure of, do that first. And then you're making the decision from your heart, and not from your mind. The other thing is listening to your heart's GPS, I call it. So just recognizing what are the external expectations, which are the things we usually say we should, versus what your heart and your gut are telling you that you must do. It's a very subtle nuance. But it's a really great opportunity to reflect on the last time that you felt a sudden yes in your body and just recognize that we are so conditioned to say yes to people please or because we feel like it's the path of least resistance. I am giving you permission right now to say no as a complete sentence with no justification, and people will be fully fine with that. You don't need to create a whole story and placate the other, but just say no. No, thank you. Maybe
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. Let me tell you to your point. Okay. In 1990, 1989 was my first start to get sober. I had given up drugs many years before, but my first 89, and I was still in New York. So I got a dose of New York sobriety. People that are hearing this, y'all know what I'm talking about. But I worked with an amazing sponsor, and I worked with a man because I disguised myself as a boy. I had shaved my head. I'm telling you, it's another story for another show. But I
Wow.
accidentally went to a man's meeting. And on the way out, this guy picked three of us, me and two other guys. And we got sober together. And I pretended that I was a boy or a young boy or an adult boy for several weeks. And I finally asked him, I said, I got to confess because you're talking about the truth. And I said, I'm actually not a boy. I'm actually a girl. I'm actually a woman. And he looked at me in front of the other two and he said, do you really think we thought you were a man? And, and I thought, how kind. He didn't yell at me. But here's my point. This first time that I was told to put my hand on I look good with no hair. I'm telling you, this was Sinead O'Connor's year. So I shaved that head before I left that job. But he gave us an exercise about put your hand over your heart. I couldn't do it. I could
Oh,
not do it. So
isn't that
you're
interesting?
right. It is difficult. And I want to say this because I would love for you all listening if you could hit the pause button on judging yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't put my hand on my heart in front of these two other people that it's such an interesting story. You know, I got sober with my one of my buddies who was Muslim and the other one who was Jewish. And that was such an interesting spiritual journey with them, but I couldn't put my hand on my heart. And these two, they lived by putting their hands over their heart.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
take that lightly. And I wanted to say to people, start start. If you don't
Yeah.
like the concept of breathing, see if you can take your hand and simply put it on your heart, not for anybody else, not for a country, but to connect with yourself. See, this
Yeah.
is what I wanted to talk to you about because this idea, solitude, stillness, some
Hmm.
people look at me sometimes and say, really, you grew up living in a closet. I said, I did grow up, but that was my choice. I lived in a family that was totally chaotic, and I had two stepsisters and a new brother, and I built myself a little fort in the closet. No, my family did not lock me in the closet. I am an introvert. That was my homie. But let's talk about this. What are some of the practices that we can connect with? And then how does it open up a gateway for us to redefine success?
Hmm. Uh, well, I think that what you really need to ultimately come to is figuring out what your core values are. A lot of what we're talking about just comes back to value mapping. And there are exercises that we can definitely do. If you want to reach out to me, we can definitely do these kinds of things. This is this is a really big deal because when you are feeling out of alignment or that blur or just not feeling good in your body and you know something's off, I guarantee it's because there's a way that you're living that's not aligned with your values. So if you can sit down and come up with all the things that you value, narrow it down to your top three or four, and then start figuring out if the actions that you're taking and decisions that you're making are aligning with those, that is going to be a huge step. I also feel like, I call it a value-based compass. Also speaking your truth, right? Like I feel like we tell ourselves stories, like you said about the judgment. We would never say things to our friends that we say to ourselves. And just think about like whose voice is that? You know, when that little inner critic comes in that's telling you something, whose voice is that? It's not you. It's not you. So it's either something that you heard somebody else say or you took it along the way. I told myself that I didn't have a good singing voice. And like, I'm not going to win any competitions. But what I realized was when I started getting into this spiritual work, there's a lot of singing out on the land.
That's right.
And your voice changes when you have spirit coming through you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could, that I sounded this way. And it made me cry because I had this recognition that I suppressed my own voice. Like, how sad is that? So, just reclaiming that, owning what's yours, no need to apologize. I also would say that, reframing metrics away from external things like titles and revenue, income, accolades towards feelings of joy and integrity and flow. So, just recognizing what's in alignment, what is your reframing purpose as your sweet spot where your gift meets the world's needs,
Mm,
where it's not something that you've been conditioned to feel like you have to do. Maybe your purpose is just to radiate a certain vibration or
yeah,
frequency to the world. It doesn't even have to be your job or it doesn't have to be your primary job. Consider the fact that prosperity isn't just income. It's feeling resourced with friendships and love and nature and pets and the ability to travel, maybe just, put your feet in the ocean. So there's a lot more than money. And then I'm an erotic blueprint sex and intimacy coach. So one of the things I really, really feel strongly about is reclaiming your erotic liberation, owning pleasure as your birthright. When we tap into ourselves and we're looking for pleasure, that's just the starting
mhm,
point to recognize that through pleasure, we can instantly reset the nervous system, reframe ourselves, come into our heart space, and start recognizing and building on that fact that
yeah,
uh, that that you are entitled to feel good and alive and juicy in your body, and that is going to increase your vibration and bring in that flow that you're looking for, right?
yeah. I want to get back to something you said. I never did have an opportunity to bring Pat Wright on my show. Pat Wright was the first lady of gospel here. She died at age 78 in 2022. So let's talk about bringing ourselves home. Now, I grew up with two sisters, stepsisters that could sing. So my mom, Mama Doris, would get us three girls all dressed up to look alike, and we would sing. So we would practice these songs. And for whatever reason, I could not get the key right. And my sister Joy said to me one day, just move your lips. We got you covered with the harmony. And so for the long, but I grew up with that mindset that you can't sing, and I love to sing. I mean, if I'm in the car by myself and I know the lyrics to every song.
Mhm.
Why? Because I grew up not able to read and write, but I could memorize things, especially lyrics. So I'm in a workshop with Pat, best gospel group. I'm in a gospel workshop. I love gospel music. So I'm in a gospel workshop with Pat. And she came over to me and she said, "You're not singing. Why are you in a why are you in a music and singing work? Why are you in this class and you're not singing?" I said, "I can't hit this key. I can't, I'm not able." Now, being a musician, I can hear a tone of something.
Yeah.
So Pat says, "Well, let me hear what you can sing." So I picked something to sing. She said, "You're a tenor. You're trying to sing like a soprano. This is the metaphor. Sing in the tone that's so natural to you. And
Mm.
don't try to sing like other people." Isn't that what we are talking about today?
Your voice and your frequency is your medicine for humanity. Think about that. It
Mm,
is your unique blueprint.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is important to know because it takes us right back to home. And that right back to home is how we define how we come up with a new definition for success. See, for
Mhm.
me, that new definition about that song and my voice was I can sing and I sing in the tone
Yeah.
that I'm aligned with, not in your tone, in another tone. So let's talk about the new definition of success and bring this full circle.
Success to me is not about proving yourself uh, and climbing ladders and checking checking goals. It's about being and connecting with yourself and to who you are. It's to embodying the truth of your power, your purpose, and your potential. My mission is to help people step into that because I feel like that really is that's it in a nutshell. It's an ongoing practice of connecting into yourself, recognizing that our body is constantly talking to us and sending us message. We are connected to our higher self. We are connected to spirit. These messages are always coming in through intuitive gifts that could come in through any of the senses. It doesn't have to be clairvoyance or clairaudience. It could be just having a knowing or a feeling. And I think that the more that you are practicing this and connecting to this and then getting a hit and then testing it and then recognizing that, oh, that was the right thing to do. That you start to build trust that you actually have the best answers for yourself and your unique situation. I think that even relates to medically, like my hope is that people stop outsourcing their healing and start checking in with
Mm.
themselves first for triage. Why is my knee suddenly hurting? Let me ask it. What's the best thing for this? What's the best supplement to take? Do a pendulum test with your body. There are ways that we can use energy and energetics and intuition to empower ourself and and through that find more and more of our purpose and divine potential.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. There are tools now that practitioners, even doctors are using now, especially muscle testing. I mean, when you look at something like that, the pendulum is just groundbreaking. But there are so many things that if we just ask the question that you just brought up,
Hmm.
me,
Yeah. And when I'm doing healing sessions, one of the things that I love, if I feel like it's appropriate, is once I have somebody completely relaxed, I say, this is a wonderful time for you to ask any questions or a question I already know that they wanted to ask. This is a good time to do that because they are
mhm,
so tapped in
mhm,
and connected, and they instantly get an image or a sign or a word and
mhm.
or a sense, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. What are some of the women that you know that have redefined success for themselves? When we think about this, we know real life examples. Who are some of the examples of women that you relate to?
Mm, I think the people that have come from the corporate world uh, that are like me, embodying the faith that if they are doing what they know to be aligned with their purpose, that spirit will have their back. And that they are embracing that faith and stepping into it, knowing that the money's not going to be there. Money isn't security anymore. But I'm doing something that's impacting other people and it is filling me up. I'm watching them grow. I'm mentoring, I'm impacting, I'm extending my reach, and then that's going to ripple. And I know that personally, that's what fills me up about this work, moving out of technology and into energy alchemy, sex and intimacy coaching, transformation coaching. That is having a front row seat to somebody's instant eyes wide open, like, oh my gosh, I just had an experience of what you're talking about that now I can call in
Yeah,
and build on.
yeah. And there are so many role models out there, people to look at. There was a host of our show, Sherry Clark, who was in the top 3% in the technical world executives, right? She's with a firm now. But that didn't stop her from creating Courage to Be Seen. to creating that aspect of herself. Outside of that, her family and came first. And when I think about her and I think about how she navigated all those places and what it took and what she would not do for a job that didn't honor her family and caring for her family, I never forgot that.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop her success. And I think that's the trust and faith we have to have.
Yeah. There's not a lot of people have done that in the past, but they are absolutely being called to do that now.
I love it.
Mhm.
I want to ask you, what's your personal message out of everything we've talked about today? What would you like to leave us with? And let folks know, again, how do they work with you? Anything you've got upcoming.
I feel like if I could crystallize it down, I just want people to know that we're divine beings who I believe have incarnated now to help humanity usher into this new era of peace and ease. All the systems are breaking down. If everything is falling apart around you, it is for a reason. Things need to collapse so that they can be rebuilt in a different way. And I know it's hard, it sucks, but if you can just trust that it's happening for you and not to you, and also that our bodies aren't built for this physical, emotional, and chemical stress that we're enduring. So once we can tap into the truth of who we are and why we're here, it really helps reprioritize what's important to us and gets us into a flow where you have less of the stress that frankly is manifesting as energetic blocks in your body. So to answer part two of that, what I love doing is alchemizing energy. I help people tap into their life force energy, their eros, their sexual energy, to help them use that for healing, to clear energetic blocks that are preventing full mobility, that are in the way of health and wellness. And it's an honor and a blessing to hold space for people to show them that their body's capable of healing themselves.
Thank you so much for today. And again, please give out your website and let folks know how they can schedule time with you.
AlignedEnergy.com. That's also my social handle. So for YouTube and Instagram, and once you get to the website, you can book a call. You can scroll through the different types of healing sessions available. You can look at the erotic blueprint coaching that I'm available for. I would encourage you that if you don't just straight up know what you want to do, to book that call. I'm very happy to talk with you about what your goals are and how we can help get there.
Yeah, the first step for all of you, as I've talked about often, is you've got to make that call. Asking for help, even if you do not know the question, is a step that you take that you will not regret. Manon,
Mhm.
thank you so much for everything. To all of you out there, I hope you're picking up something in this show that will enable you to take a step to a new pathway to freedom and get to define who you are coming home and your success on your own terms. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Aligned Energy, where ancient wisdom meets modern health and wellness. This is Manon.
And I'm Dr. Pat.
Join us for more inspiration to step into your power and reconnect with your inner wisdom. Be sure to tune in every second Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. I invite you to like and subscribe to Aligned Energy with Manon on your favorite platform. And if you're ready to go deeper, visit alignedenergyhealing.com to book a healing or coaching session or schedule a complimentary discovery call. Until next time, stay aligned, stay empowered, and embrace the energy that is uniquely yours. See you next time.